I have an important announcement, everyone. An announcement of epic proportions. I finally started The Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. Welcome to a review that I worked very hard on of The Eye of the World. The wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. Time and history are a wheel and a pattern. Ages come and go with events weaving into the pattern and repeating themselves with few differences. The Eye of the World revolves around protagonists Rand al'Thor, Matrim Mat Cauthon, Perrin Ibarra, Egwene Alver, and Nynaeve Almera after their residence of Emond's Field is unexpectedly attacked by Trollocs during the spring Beltane festival. Trollocs are half-human, half-animal creatures with human faces, bear snouts, and ram's horns. The Trollocs are intent on capturing Rand, Mat, and Perrin. To save their village from further attacks, the Emond's Fielders flee it and are accompanied by the Aes Sedai wizardress Moiraine Damodred, her warder Lan, and gleeman Tom Merrilin. A gleeman is a person who travels from town to town telling stories and playing music. On the run, after leaving Emond's Field, Moiraine fills Rand and his friends in on some history and how it relates to their current predicament. She tells them about the Creator and the Dark One, about the beginning of time itself, and how, at the beginning, the Creator locked the Dark One in a prison in the land of Sheol Ghul, and how the Dark One, also known as Baalzamon, is now trying to reach out beyond his prison and bring destruction to the world. Moiraine tells the Emond's Fielders about the past, about how Luz Therin Telamon and the 100 Companions defeated the Dark One and resealed his prison eons ago during a previous turn of the Wheel of Time. She says that the Dark One is trying to break out yet again. Baalzamon is trying to return to power, she says, and his plan for the world involves the three boys specifically. Pursued by ever-increasing numbers of Trolloc hordes, the Emond's Fielders are guided by Moiraine and Lan as they try to learn more about the Wheel of Time, the great pattern of the ages, and their own places and destinies within it. My overall opinion of The Eye of the World is that it's a good book. There's a lot that I liked with the novel, and some things that I did not like as much. I'll touch on what I enjoyed, and I'll throw a few criticisms in as well. This is really Rand's book. He's the main character. Rand lives with his father, Tam, in a little house on a farm in Emond's Field outside of the main village. This is where they are attacked by the Trollocs and Myrddraal a night before Beltane festival. Myrddraal are fearsome man-like creatures with no face. Tam is badly wounded in the incident with the Myrddraal, and Rand manages to get his father to the village proper to find help. Once in the village, he discovers that it has been attacked as well, and this action is what opens the novel up. Now, up until this point in his life, Rand has assumed that Trollocs, Fades, the Dark One, and the like are probably just legends. But he finds out that the Dark One is real and is after him and his friends. He struggles with the implications of all this and fears for his life. I have a feeling he's going to be the key player in this series as a whole. Because Rand is around 19 years old in The Eye of the World, this series is going to be a coming of age for him, as it will be for the other characters from Emond's Field. I believe they are all teenagers except for Nynaeve, the Wisdom, who is in her mid-20s. I really like a coming-of-age story that involves a long journey, and that is one of the best aspects of this whole thing for me. A note on Rand as a character. He has a good moral compass. He was raised well by Tam al'Thor, and he has a Frodo-like quality, and it's no wonder Jordan has him at the forefront of the Eye of the World. I enjoyed reading about Rand, and I'm looking forward to learning more about him as I move on with the series. Mat and Perrin are directly targeted by Baalzamon just as Rand is. Mat is a carefree spirit and a prankster, and Perrin is a blacksmith's apprentice. They play central roles in the story along with Rand. At one point, in Shadar Logoth, Mat snags a cursed sword from Mordeth's treasure pile. Unfortunately for him, the sword is tainted with evil and it fundamentally changes him with its evil power. Even Moiraine cannot cure him of what the sword does to him. I think Mat gets the least personality development of the three boys during the book, but he's a good character nonetheless, and the story arc with him and Mordeth's tainted sword makes for solid reading. Being a hard-working blacksmith's apprentice, Perrin is the biggest and strongest of the three boys. During the middle of the story, he and Egwene get separated from the rest of the group and end up meeting a man in the wilderness named Elias. Elias has special physical features, yellow eyes. He seems to be part man, part wolf, and he is. Elias finds Perrin and Egwene lost in the wilderness, and after speaking with them, Elias recognizes the danger that has descended on the world at large. He and his wolf pack escort Egwene and Perrin to the city of Caemlyn. While they travel, Perrin evolves. He becomes what Elias is, at least to a degree, and he has a set of yellow eyes himself by the end of the book. Perrin can taste what the wolves taste and feel what the wolves feel. I like this aspect. I like the fact that Jordan has some big ideas for this novel, and I think Perrin is going to turn into a straight badass before too long. Having a werewolf of sorts on their team should help out the other Emond's fielders in future battles. A note on Egwene. We don't learn a whole lot about her in this first installment of The Wheel of Time, but she is kind of like Rand's girlfriend. Maybe they're not together technically, but there is something unspoken between them and everyone is aware of it. I expect that Egwene is going to become quite powerful and that she will play a more prominent role as the story continues to unfold. There are many strong female characters in the Eye of the World. Moiraine is the most important character in the book aside from Rand, and she has magical capabilities. She is an unexpected guest in the Two Rivers for the Beltane Festival when the Trolloc army raids the village. Moiraine is the guiding light in this story, and she actually leads the charge against the Dark One. Without her, the Emond's fielders wouldn't even have survived Beltane. One of my pet peeves for fantasy is having a character or characters that are too powerful. Characters that can solve any problem with a wave of the magic wand, so to speak. Harry Dresden, in fact, comes to mind, even though I love the Dresden Files and it's one of my favorite series. As I read, I was thinking that maybe Moiraine is too powerful. She climbs over the wall at the gates in Baerlon by becoming super big, and she also stopped a bunch of Trollocs by apparently manipulating the fabric of space and time. However, during the visit to the Green Man toward the end of the book, Moiraine is stricken down by a henchman of the Dark One. That made her feel a little more plausible to me. She straight lost that battle. I like Moiraine quite a bit, and I think Jordan was wise to use her as a director of events for the Eye of the World. Moraine's relationship with Lan is interesting. It may be the best relationship in the book. Quite mysterious, actually. Lan is a very stoic, highly trained warrior from Malkir and a king without a crown. Moiraine and Lan are intimately bonded together, not in a romantic way, but they work very well as a team and they're fun to read about. I also enjoyed the tension between Moiraine and Nynaeve. Nynaeve Nynaeve is a skilled woodswoman and good at tracking things in the forest. She has an unbending will and doesn't like to lose. After the boys and Egwene leave Emond's Field, Nynaeve tracks them down and tries to rescue them, only she finds herself wrapped up in the pattern after she does so. Nynaeve is a woman of influence and power, quite frankly, literally and figuratively, in her small community of Two Rivers, and she expects to be respected. She wants Moiraine to respect her as well, and the play between them was a joy to read about for me. For Rand, Mat, Perrin, Egwene, and even Nynaeve, coming of age is a theme. These young people are kind of green. They don't have a lot of experience in the outside world, and they haven't experienced extraordinary hardship. The weight of the world is thrown on their shoulders in an instant, and it's not easy for them to deal with. As a reader, I like watching characters grow and take on challenges, and I know that these Emond's Fielders are going to grow a lot throughout these books. I think Jordan was smart to use a relatively young cast and to bring that coming-of-age theme into the heart of his story. Tom Merrilin is a glee man, a kind of bard who travels around telling stories and playing music. He's an entertainer. Tom decides to travel with Moiraine and the kids when they leave Emond's Field after the Trolloc attack. He knows a lot about the past, and some of what we learn about history in this world comes from him. He gives advice to the boys and teaches them the ways of being a glee man, and they end up using what he teaches them to get food and shelter later on in the book. Tom sacrifices himself for them in Whitebridge, fighting a Fade to give them time to escape an attack. Fade is just another word for Myrddraal. We assume that Tom dies in this incident with the Fade, but Jordan teases us, not telling us if Tom dies or not, and I expect that he will pop back up in the story at some point. And I'll be glad if he does, because he's a wealth of information, and I know if I spend much time with Tom, I'll end up learning something. Most of it good. My favorite character is the tree-loving Loial. Loial is an Ogier, and Ogiers are a race of non-human creatures who have an intense love of knowledge and peace. Also known as Tree Brothers, they are great architects and stonemasons, responsible for many of the most impressive structures and cities in the world. Loial saves the day by helping our gang to access the Ways and to quickly get them to the Blight to do battle with the Dark One at the end of the novel. Loial has qualities that are worth aspiring to. He's calm, honest, cheerful, strong. He loves reading books in the steading, which is a magical forest basically, and he's very patient and wise. Except in the opinion of Elder Ogier Hammon, that is, who says that Loial is too anxious and reckless. From a human perspective at least, Loial is very stable and balanced and knowledgeable, and I love him as a character. And the Ways may be the best idea in the whole book for me. Because Loial is an Ogier, he can access this kind of other world, this other dimension of time and space. It works as a kind of wormhole where a person can be teleported a long distance by spending a short period of time in the Ways. If you don't get lost in it, that is. Many of the pathways in the Ways are broken, and it takes a skilled guide to navigate them. The Ways are quite imaginative, and learning more about them is something that I'm looking forward to. Now, keep in mind, guys, that this is my first time reading this book, so if I get any technical details concerning the world or the magic in the Wheel of Time, forgive me. A note on the characters. The Tuatha people are my favorite community in the book. Also known as the Traveling People, the Tuatha are a nomadic type who live in brightly painted wagons and live by a pacifist philosophy known as the Way of the Leaf. Referred to by outsiders outsiders as tinkers or just called the traveling people, they will never do any violence, be it in anger or even to save their own lives. They travel the world in search of their lost song, and finding that lost song is their primary goal. These travelers have an Eastern way of life about themselves. They are at one with nature and the world, and they are almost like a group of traveling monks. They practice mindfulness and enjoy spending time with one another. They have an essence of truth and of life about themselves. Sometimes reading a novel is just plain out fun, and characters like these make a book fun. Along with the ways the tuathaan are one of the best ideas in the story. Who is your favorite character in this book or series? Let me know down in the comments. Now, you may have noticed from my brief description of the book that it sounds a lot like The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. What with the Dark One gaining for power, and the Fellowship leaving the Shire, Emond's Field. Not to mention, they're led by a wizard who apparently wants to save the world. Jordan even works a few poems into the eye of the world, and if you've read J.R.R. Tolkien's epic, you know that there are many poems involved. Now, I'm someone who thinks The Lord of the Rings is a story worth being retold. It needs to be retold. It must be retold. So the fact that Robert Jordan's story is at least loosely structured and inspired by The Lord of the Rings is not a criticism here. There are a lot of parallels between the two stories, and we won't go through them all, but a few similarities are the fact that Lan is a king without a crown like Aragorn. A Trolloc in Jordan's world is similar to an orc in Tolkien's, and the Wheel of Time even has its own Mount Doom, spelled D-H-O-O-M. An absolutely critical aspect for this kind of story, the Tolkien template, if you will, is that a long journey has to happen. The characters have to go from place to place to place, generally receiving some help from friends along the way. Jordan adapts this Tolkien template for his The Wheel of Time, and it works quite well, in my opinion. Now, Robert Jordan authors an interesting social hierarchy. In any given small town or village, there will be two governing bodies. The women's circle, generally led by the wisdom, also the village council, who are the male governing body. The women's circle and the village council are often at odds with one another, and they have equal power for policy making in a given village. This makes me think that the yin and yang, the male and female halves of things, is going to be an important theme going forward with these books. I also liked the tension between the Children of the Light and the Queen's Guards in Andor. The Children of the Light aren't deeply explained, but they seem to be an organization made to fight against the dark. The Children of the Light, however, at least in part, seem to be corrupt. They are generally feared by people and have been known to terrorize them in the name of the light. Jordan creates a convincing social setting, from small to big-time governmental bodies, from queens down to common beggars. Also, although there are powerful wizards and evil creatures, regular humans still hold positions of power. The Queen of Andor, Morghese Trakand, is an example, and I give that a thumbs up. There is a massive amount of history and lore in the Wheel of Time. We only get a scent of it in the Eye of the World, and I want more. We learn a bit about the creation event. We learn about the breaking of the world. The breaking of the world was an event that happened after Luz Telamon resealed the Dark One's prison. During the breaking, male Aes Sedai, of which there aren't anymore, used the One power to destroy mountains and raise new ones. This reshaped the surface of the earth, and whole cities were wiped out by this. Civilization completely collapsed during this time. We also learn about Arthur Hawkwing and the Trolloc Wars. The Wheel of Time has a lot of scope, and in fact there are 3 different calendars used in this world because there's so much width and depth to this story. Jordan does a great job staying in the present in the eye of the world, giving us just glimpses of the past and potential futures. And after completing it, I felt like I wanted to read the next book to learn more, and in fact, I started book 2, The Great Hunt, right after I finished The Eye of the World. A note on Robert Jordan. I discovered that he was a scientist, a physicist actually. He must have been a really smart guy. He also enlisted in the US Army and served 2 tours of duty during the Vietnam War as a helicopter gunner. He was awarded several medals, including the Bronze Star, and later worked for the US Navy as a nuclear engineer. I mention it because when you read an author, you get a sense of who they are. It is interesting to see how an author's experiences in life come out in their writing. Although The Eye of the World has a young adult style to it, Jordan touches on some of the darker parts of the human condition. This is a novel primarily about good versus evil, and I wonder how much of that comes from what Jordan saw and experienced during the war. A note on the young adult genre aspect. There are different niches within young adult, from kind of childish to very mature. Yes, it's clean in the way that there isn't a lot of cursing, sex, or highly violent descriptions, but it's mature in its philosophical nature and in the way that it's a serious story. There are also some pretty horrific things that happen in it. I think that a person who doesn't necessarily like young adult still might like this novel and series. Before I move on to what I disliked about this novel, I want to touch on an element of mystery. There are layers of mystery in the book that serve it very well. The relationship between Rand and his father Tam is in question. Rand has always assumed that he is his father's son, but he comes to learn that he may not be, that Tam may have adopted him, and that Rand may really have Aiel blood, which would make sense because he has red hair. Our tribe have a run-in with a girl named Min in Berlon. Min can see the future, and Moiraine seems to respect her. Min can't always see the future perfectly clearly, but she does get a general sense of how things are going to play out. We meet her only briefly during this story, outside of the Stag and Lion Inn, if I recall correctly, and she plays a very minor role. She is mysterious, and I'm not only interested in what she knows, but how she knows it. Rand, Mat, and Perrin all experience dreams. Moiraine warns them about the dreams and tells them to let her know if they are dreaming, but they choose not to alert her when they are. On at least one occasion, Rand is injured in the dream he's having, and when he wakes up, he is bleeding. Dreams play very prominently in The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and I like the theme of dreams in this type of novel. Brandon Sanderson wrote the last 3 books in this very series, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the tone and feel of the story change when the narrative transitions from Jordan to Sanderson. I'd also like to know more about the magic system. I have heard fans praise Jordan for his imagination in this area. We see a little magic in this first book, but we get very little depth, explanation, or history on it. The author gives just a hint that males and females can experience the magic differently. I'm excited to find out more about what kinds of magic exist and how it all works. Robert Jordan takes care to keep his audience guessing, bringing in mysterious characters, revealing only a tiny part of an important plot point, giving us minimal insight into the Wheel of Time and the Great Pattern. All of this made me think ahead and try to predict what was going to happen, and that is a lot of fun as a reader. I got most of it wrong, I got a few things right, and I'm already making predictions on what I think will happen throughout the rest of the series. Of course, only reading one book in a 15-book sequence doesn't give me a whole lot to go on, but I think that by the time I finish The Great Hunt, I'll have a pretty good idea about what I'm getting into do with this thing. Moving on to what I did not like with this one. There are some plot conveniences in the book. When Rand and Mat are in Four Kings, they are trapped in their room in the inn. Sam'el Hake and his guards mean to take the boys into custody and are pounding on their room door demanding to be let in. Jordan builds a good amount of pressure here in this scene. Rand and Mat are back to the wall, so to speak. Rand unexpectedly somehow channels power and a lightning bolt hits the window of the room, blowing open an escape route for them. And that's fine and all, but it seemed a little unlikely. The party are also trapped in the hills with Trollocords surrounding them when Moiraine uses magic to get them out of it. Now don't get me wrong, plot conveniences weren't really a problem with the book, but I did want to mention that there are some. The pacing was pretty good for me. The book starts good, in a kind of enchanting way, and that's what I like so much about epic fantasy. However, there's a stretch in the book where Rand and Mat are going from inn to inn that plays out over a couple of hundred pages, and that was a little slow for me. I like reading about different inns when I'm reading epic fantasy. Inns are one of my favorite things to look for in a fantasy plot like this, but that part of the novel for me wasn't exactly thrilling. The pacing does pick back up toward the end with things falling into place as Jordan answers some of our questions. I was not super impressed with the antagonists in the novel. The Trollocs are a kind of generic fantasy antagonist, and the Myrddraal aren't anything unique either. The Dark One doesn't seem all that powerful. Maybe that's because he still hasn't broken out of his prison, but Rand silences the Dark One at the end of the book, and it just seemed too easy to shut him down. Although I'm sure he'll be back. I did like some of the secondary antagonists though. The Children of the Light are interesting, and there are some others, like Padden Fane, that I look forward to reading more about as I go on with the series. The biggest weak point in this for me was the actual ending. I was almost shocked at what I read, and I couldn't believe that that was the conclusion. Rand has a white cord attaching him to some faraway power, apparently, and Ba'alzamon has a black cord just like it. Rand notices that Ba'alzamon's cord is devouring his own, and Ba'alzamon tells Rand to kneel at his feet. He tells him that the Black Ajah are in service to his darkness, and that it would be best for Rand to go ahead and kneel before him rather than risking defeat. Black Ajah are a theoretical group of Aes Sedai in employ to the Dark One. Ba'alzamon shows him illusions of his loved ones being tortured by Myrddraal. Rand, though, denies Ba'alzamon. Rand produces a blade of pure white light and slashes Ba'alzamon's black cord. The black cord rebounds back into the Dark One and sends him flying into the fireplace. Rand then feels the white cord attached to him thinning and sends the last amount of power he has left into his nemesis. Ba'alzamon and the whole chamber catch fire and begin to burn and blacken. The fire becomes white hot until something strikes Rand, knocking him unconscious. And that's pretty much what happens at the end of the story. WTF. So Rand defeats Ba'alzamon in a kind of spirit world? Weird. Although Rand gets this victory, the Dark One does not break out of his prison in Shale Ghul during the book. I assume that, as the Wheel of Time story continues to unfold, eventually the Dark One will be able to break out of his prison. I'm not sure, though. Although the book was good overall, the ending felt a little rushed. A lot rushed. I must keep in mind, though, that this was the first book Jordan authored in the series. As an author, it can be hard to know how you're going to end the first installment in a series like this, and that can be a big challenge. You have to bring some closure as the writer, but leave the novel open as well. I know from being an avid reader that authors generally mature and get better as they write a long series, so I expect that future books in the Wheel of Time will have a better ending interesting to them than this one did. Another thing concerning the end of the book. After Rand battles with the Dark One, he awakes and realizes to his horror that he channeled the One Power, that he is condemned to a fate of insanity and rotting death because male Aes Sedai who use the One Power meet a dark end. He finds his way back to the site of the Eye, where he finds an uninjured Egwene and Nynaeve, along with a recovering Moiraine. Mat, Perrin, and Loyal emerge from the cave of the now empty Eye with a chest containing the Horn of Valir, shattered pieces of one of the seals to the Dark One's prison, and a white cloth revealed to be the dragon banner of Luz Theron Telamon. Moiraine takes hold of the Horn of Valir and says she knows what needs to be done with it. That is the direction the novel takes in the last few pages. The book ends with Moraine's ominous statement to herself that the dragon is reborn. This seemed a little unexpected to me for the Horn to come into the story like this, just abruptly, but I do like the elements involved here. Because I'm reading the second novel in the series now, The Great Hunt, I know that the title refers to the Great Hunt for the Horn of Valir, so the Horn is central to the plot in Book 2. I'm currently clueless about what the Horn actually does, but I hope it ends up doing something cool. Horns are a common theme in fantasy literature, and I always enjoy it when one pops up. As far as the seal to the Dark One's prison, I'm not sure what that will involve, but it's quite clear that the flag of Luz Theron Telamon is going to end up going to Rand. Or at least that is my thought on the matter. Although Jordan hits us with a very abrupt end in The Eye of the World, that was a bit messy in my opinion. He does sprinkle the horn, the seal, and the flag in at the end to entice us to keep reading, and I felt that that helped to salvage the end a bit as well. All in all, I got what I wanted with this novel. I wanted to start a grand tale with a huge amount of depth. I wanted a journey, and I wanted something more than a trilogy or even a short series. I wanted an epic, so I went with this epic of all epics, and I enjoyed it. I started reading The Great Hunt right after I finished The Eye of the World, and I'm looking forward to seeing this story grow. I think that once I finish The Great Hunt, I'll have a much better idea what I'm getting into with this whole thing overall, and I'm actually enjoying the second book even more than I enjoyed The Eye of the World. Obviously, I'm new to The Wheel of Time, but I do know about this show. It's an American television series on Amazon Prime Video. The first season consists of 8 episodes, released in 2021, so this is a new show, and from what I understand, those first 8 episodes pretty much play into The Eye of the World, Book 1 specifically in the series. If I fall in love with The Wheel of Time, like I have with the Dark Tower series, I may watch that television show. I have a feeling that I would probably enjoy it. Please leave your comments and questions down in the comments section below. They always generate an interesting discussion. Thanks for joining me for this review of The Eye of the World. May you all have long days and pleasant nights, my friends.